hello, everybody, and welcome back to your Energy Booster podcast. Before anything else, let me check if I'm truly live on my social media platforms. All right, I see. All right, this is good. This is doing good. We're supposed to start this live stream at 4:30, but then we just had a really bad um technology problem. But here we are, and yeah, we figured this out. And yeah, let me just have a little bit of tech check before I introduce our very special guest for today's episode. All right, give me a sec. Hang in there, okay? And while I'll figure this out, why don't you write, or yeah, let me know where you are connecting from. Write it on the comment section so I can be able to give you a shout out. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, give me a sec. Mm, Here we go. All right, guys, hold on. This is the first time that I am having this kind of technology problem. And yeah, it's normal. It makes us a little bit anxious or worried. But yeah, I think, yeah, technology is not perfect, just like we are. We're not perfect. So here we go, everybody, and let the show begin. So, let me introduce a very special guest for today's episode. My sister from another mother. I know, right? I have a lot of sisters because, yeah, I love people. So, in today's episode of your Energy Booster podcast Academy show, or nah, podcast slash Academy show, we have Miss Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews. And guys, she is only 25-year old, and she is the first generation college graduate. Really good. She is a Truman Scholar, a mental health professional, a best selling author, an advocate, a public speaker, an ordained chaplain, and a four-time pageant title holder across Connecticut and Nevada. You know, guys, I am a fan of pageantry. So I just asked her earlier if she wanted to pursue Miss Universe. She said, yeah, maybe not. Okay. But she can, you guys, if you can just see her, she's so pretty and she's so tall. Really. She was born just 3 pounds and, addicted to cocaine. That is her story. Kelsey was raised in East Haven, Connecticut, and she moved to Las Vegas by herself, very independent, at 18 years old to establish Nevada residency and put herself through college. She graduated summa cum laude with her Bachelor of Social Work degree from her dream school, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, class 2023, fresh from college. Wow. Professionally, she worked as a rehabilitative mental health provider before going on to spend many years in the nonprofit sector, specializing in community engagement and program management. Her areas of focus have included mental health, suicide prevention, and substance abuse, advocating passionately to bring awareness to the drug and opioid crisis that took her mother's life in 2016. Kelsey is the founder and CEO of Phoenix Rising Consulting and Coaching LLC, or Phoenix Rising Coaching and Consulting LLC. In addition to launching a podcast, publishing books, and motivational speaking, she aspires to coach women who are recovering from trauma, abuse, and or neglect by helping them master their mindsets and find beauty amidst the ashes of their pain as they transform from victim to victor and unleash the phoenix within them that is waiting to rise. Wow. In the future, Kelsey also plans to begin providing coaching, consulting, and training to leaders in all spheres of influence. She hopes to one day create her own training program based on her TED Talk, our TEDx talk, Servants First, which will focus specifically on professionals and institutional leaders. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome my dear friend, Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews. Hi, Kelsey.
We did it!
We did.
That was a very stressful experience. We worked really hard for this, everyone. So just putting that there.
Yes, that's true. And yeah, nobody can stop us.
No.
Nobody.
We were going to make this happen come hell or high water, and here we are. So thank you for
Amen.
working that with me so that we could get that going. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, Kelsey, tell us about your story. I am so interested of hearing from your story. And I want to know what motivates you to step up to help others at this very young age. When people just wanna, party at 25, just, party here and there.
Right. I have
But
always
you,
said that I was born in the wrong time period, the wrong generation. I'm what you would call an old soul. So I'm 25 physically, but I don't feel 25. I've never partied. I've never really done any of that. It's never been of interest for me. And that's probably because of my upbringing, which can kind of just segue us right into telling a little bit of my story. But my mother had a substance use disorder. I was born addicted to drugs, and I grew up in a home where I watched the damage that substances can do, not just to an individual, but to a family, right? And I'm a product of that. And so I think that from an early age, I watched my mom struggle so much through her life, and even other family members that I have that have also struggled with addiction, because we do know that, substance use and addictive personalities run in families, right? And so I think that it's always been within me to want to help people. I always knew from a young age that I was meant to be able to impact people and help people and make a difference in people's lives. That was very evident to me. And so I was raised by my mom and my grandparents, and it was a very, very dysfunctional environment. And when I look back now, I can see that they just didn't know what they didn't know, right? They had the information that they had at the time, but it was very dysfunctional and very tumultuous, right, in my house. And there was a lot of yelling and screaming and domestic violence and drug use and my mother's suicide attempts and overdoses. And it was just mass chaos. It was not something that a child should ever have to witness or endure. And so I helped my grandparents a lot with taking care of my mother. And I kind of stepped up and was parentified into the role of my mother's mother. And I became one of her primary caretakers at a very early age, because I knew that somebody had to do it, right? And my grandparents had a really hard time caring for her and dealing with that situation. And so I stepped up to do it. And I lived my life knowing that my mom was going to die. Like, there was no doubt in my mind that that was how she was going to go out. She was going to have a drug overdose and she was going to die. And that's exactly what happened when we found her dead in our home when I was 17 years old. So it was very, very unfortunate for everyone involved. And when I look back now, I realize that the pattern and the cycle that I was seeing was actually narcissistic abuse, right? It was a cycle of a narcissistic style of abuse in the home, right? When you have someone with a drug problem, and then someone with narcissistic tendencies, and then someone with codependent tendencies, and then they have a child and they raise a child. It's mass chaos, right? So that's a little bit of my story of my upbringing. And I just always knew from a very early age that I wasn't like a lot of my peers. I never fit in with my people my age. And I just always knew that I had a purpose, that God put me here for a reason. And that's kind of what got me through some of those very difficult moments in my childhood when I just felt like I don't want to do this anymore. I knew I had to, because there would be people one day that I would be able to impact when I finally am telling my story like I'm telling you now.
Yeah, amazing. So are you an only child or
I
you have
am.
other
So
siblings?
I have a half brother, and I didn't know that I had a half brother until I was about 16 years old. And unfortunately, he is in jail. So that kind of gives you an idea about kind of where I come from. My dad was not around when I was a child. For whatever reason, I get different versions of the story from both sides of the family. I will never know, right, the full truth of that, but regardless of the reason why, he just wasn't there. And so it was just me and my mom and my grandparents, and I have uncles and some other extended family, but it was just us. I was the only child in the house.
Wow. So at a very young age, like, you were in school, like school age through high school, like you've always been an achiever for sure because you graduated as summa cum laude. I mean, it could be a very extremely opposite
Yes.
outcome because of from where you were coming from. Like, I can see total chaos, but then
Yeah.
you rose and you rise above all those struggles.
Yeah, I I I guess I was always what you would call an overachiever. I never saw myself that way, but I danced for 13 years. My grandparents tried really hard to put me in a lot of extracurricular activities that got me out of the house, right? And so I danced for 13 years. I did pageants, I rode horses. I was always going and doing something and competing somewhere, or singing, or any of those activities. But when I was in high school, I actually didn't do very well. I did well when I was younger in school. And then by the time I got to high school, I just wasn't having it. I had my own health issues. My mom had issues. Everybody had issues. And I was trying to take care of everybody's issues and step up to the plate and keep everybody, keep the roof on the house, right? That was kind of what I was just trying to keep everything calm all the time. And so I didn't do very well in high school, but that changed obviously when I went to college. But I get that a lot. When a child grows up and they watch a parent or caregiver figures make bad choices, that child is going to go one of two ways. They're going to go straight directly down the path that the
Yeah.
parent went down, don't pass go, do not collect $200, right? Or they're going to do the exact opposite. And by the grace of God, I've done the opposite. And I just always knew that I didn't want to end up in that type of situation in my life. And I did everything that I could to ensure that I did not end up on drugs, homeless, in jail, dead, right? Like those are all of the places on the streets, right? Like there's so many things that I could be doing, but that was never an option for me, and I never let it be an option. And that is why the first chance I got when I turned 18, I left Connecticut and I moved to Las Vegas, because I knew that the only shot in life that I had was to get out of there. The only chance at making it out and making something of myself was, unfortunately, at the time, to not be there anymore. So that's what I did.
Wow. So your grandmother really influenced you a lot in how you are right now. Did
Very
she
much.
bring you to church?
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes,
So,
we were Catholic. She
mhm.
always brought me to church. My mom would come sometimes too when we would go to church together, and she had me very much immersed in that. I was in the youth group, and then as soon as I made my first Holy Communion, I became an altar server, and I was an altar server for 10 years. And there would be some Sundays when I would be on the altar serving as an altar server, and then she would be on the altar serving as a lector, and she would do the readings. And so it was always something that we did together. And then even when I was a teenager, her and I worked for the same grocery store. So we both worked for ShopRite and we were both on the front end. So I would be cashiering, I would be ringing people up, and she would be bagging people's groceries. We had
Oh,
the same little
wow.
uniform. I have pictures of her and I in our ShopRite uniforms.
So you have good memories with your mom.
I do. I have good
Yeah.
memories with my mom and my grandmother and my grandfather. And I think that that's what made it so hard for me to really make sense of my experiences, because it wasn't all bad, right? It almost would have
Yeah.
been easier for me to process through all the junk, like all the difficult stuff, if it had all just been bad, right? I can't look back on everything and say, oh, it was all bad, because it wasn't, right? So
Yeah.
that made it difficult for me to reconcile in my brain, because unfortunately, what that really is called in more clinical terms is intermittent reinforcement, right? And that's what
Oh,
causes a trauma bond. So what happens is there's a high, and then there's a low, and then there's a high, and then there's a low. And that constant up and down creates what's called a trauma bond, right? Because when you think
mm.
about drug use, why do people
Mm.
get high? Because it releases chemicals in the brain. It feels good. So the brain
Yeah.
releases chemicals. Then when you come down from that, the body wants it. And it's the same
Yeah.
thing in relationships, right? If it's a good moment, and then there's a bad moment, and then there's a good moment, and there's a bad moment. And then it's almost like the brain becomes chemically dependent on those relationships, because it has the same effect as drug use and,
Drugs.
and seeking that high. And so that was hard for me to reconcile through my healing journey, as I processed through my anger and my grief and trying to understand why things were the way they were. It wasn't all bad. But for a
True.
while, it was easier for me to focus on all the bad, because it hurt
Mm.
less. And then I had to go through my own journey and start to allow myself to acknowledge, like, wait a minute, it wasn't by any means healthy, but it wasn't all bad, right? And I do have good memories, and I had experiences and opportunities as a child that most people never have, right? And so there's a lot that I could go into there, but it's definitely been interesting, to say the least. But regardless, I had to get to a place where I didn't minimize my experiences because there were good moments, right? What I lived through was horrendous, and most kids don't make it out, right? So for
True.
whatever reason, God's kept me around, and I know that he has a major purpose and mission for me that he's already set me out on. So,
Yeah, you're just giving me goosebumps, you
oh,
know? What an honor for you to be here with me
thank
today.
you. It's an honor that you
Yeah,
invited me. Thank you so
of
much.
course, of course. And you are welcome. My pleasure. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, in this episode we will be talking about, how a loving approach to leadership can change the world. And
Yes.
yeah, you talk about that on your TEDx talk,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm
that's
still
really
waiting for it
so
to be
inspiring.
published, but my TEDx talk was called Servants First: How a Loving Approach to Leadership Can Change the World, and that was TEDx UNLV 2024.
Amazing. So yeah, let's start there. What does leadership mean to you?
Leadership to me is about people. And I think that that is where so many people that are in leadership positions get it wrong, because leadership is about influence, and it's about people, and it's about pouring into people and building people up and making a positive impact on the people that you are honored and blessed to get to serve, right? It's a privilege to be in a leadership role to any capacity, whether it's paid or unpaid, right? I mean, my first leadership role was when I was in high school, and I worked as a volunteer at a cat rescue organization. And when I was in high school, they had me leading shifts. I was leading teams of people when I was in high school, right? And the opportunity to get to do that is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. And so for me, leadership is about others. Leadership is about having the ability to influence people in a positive way. But that's the dangerous thing about leadership roles, is that you can have a very negative impact on someone in a leadership role, right?
True.
You in a leadership role have the ability and the authority to completely impact the trajectory of someone's entire life. And how you choose to do that can not just impact their career, but their entire life. And so for me, it's about the people, right? I look at the situation in the United States. It's supposed to be about the people, right? The government
Mm-hmm.
and institutions and all of that is supposed to be set up for the people, right? The little people like us down here,
Like,
but it's not, right? The system is set up to work against the people. And there's too many people that end up in leadership roles, especially in institutions, that they get these positions and they either don't have the right skill set to manage and lead their position well and lead their people well, or they get into it and they have a wrong motive. They have an ulterior motive for why they're doing what they're doing. And either way, in either scenario, it hurts the people.
that is really true. Leadership is power. Is
Absolutely.
it power to influence people. But
Absolutely.
then, yeah, we forget about influencing people. We just focus on the power. And with
Right.
power comes abuse.
Absolutely. There's that abuse of power. And that was what a big portion of my TED talk was about was when is it that we stopped prioritizing the well-being of the people that we are responsible for? That's the big question that I have in my mind. And how is it that so many people end up in these roles and they don't belong in them? And that power, a lot of people forget their why. And the next thing you know, that power has gone to their head and there's bloodshed, right? Like people are getting hurt left and right because we either don't teach the right skills or we don't put the right people there.
True. And some leaders would use their power to manipulate people.
Too many. Too many.
Yeah, and yeah, I can see that here and there. I don't know, because maybe we need to educate people on what
Yes.
leadership really means,
Yes.
because for others, they thought leadership is just all about the title. When they get their
Right.
promotion as a boss
Yes.
or as an upline or whoever, but truly in leadership you don't have or you don't need to have a title.
Absolutely. And that's part of what I talk about status, power, title, promotion, and ego. I go into all of that in the TEDx talk because that's not what we're here to do, friends. Like, that's not what leadership is about at all. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. So, if you are in a leadership role and you are more concerned about those things than you are the people that you're leading, you're doing it wrong. And unfortunately, that's most of our country. Like, that's in most of the world, right? And it just blows my mind because I ask myself, how do we fix it? Right?
Yeah.
How do we fix this? Well, I believe it's one person at a time, and it starts with me, and it starts with you, and it starts with the people watching, right? And I talk about that in the TEDx talk. We may not be able to single-handedly fix the systemic issues that exist within our society or overthrow the hierarchies of our institutions. But what if we started with each and every one of us and created a domino effect? Because when you lead others, you're teaching them, you're guiding them, you're mentoring them. Eventually, they go on and they lead and guide and mentor others, right? And so I really believe that it just starts with one person, right? And that one person is you. And that's all it really takes. We can't go into our institutions and overthrow everything as much as I would like to, believe me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's not going to be the be all end all. It has to start with us, and we have to lead by example. And so that's a lot of what the TEDx talk was about, and I'm really looking forward to that being published.
All right. So yeah, can you share that talk to us, like yeah, portion of it, or I don't know, how would you want to do it? You tell us about how we can establish a loving approach to leadership so we can change the world.
Absolutely. Well, a big piece of the TEDx talk was focused on servant leadership, right? So I did a lot of research on different approaches to leadership, and I ended up going with servant leadership. And that was coined by Robert K. Greenleaf in a 1970 essay called The Servant is Leader. And he went in to coin that term and really describe what we know now as servant leadership. And when you think about what it means to serve, right? Let's biblically speaking, Jesus came as a servant, right?
Mm-hmm.
He came to serve others. The Son of Man did not come to serve, to be served, but to serve others, right? That's what that scripture says. And so when you think about serving someone, to serve them in a way is to love them, right? And so that's what servant leadership is all about. And I talk about how in a lot of cases people hear the word love, and society has really romanticized and sexualized the idea of love. But I'm talking about the biblical type of love here that is pure and it's sacrificial, and it honors and drives us to want to honor others as ourselves, because that's what the golden rule is. No matter what religion you are, that's the golden rule of life, is to treat others the way that you want to be treated. Is a very pure form of love, to honor thy neighbor as thyself. And so that was the idea that I went on with servant leadership. And when you look at a traditional model of leadership, if you were to look at like a pyramid, a leadership organizational pyramid, in a traditional form of leadership, the CEOs and the bigwigs and the deans and all of the bigwigs, right? They would fall on top, and then everyone else would be underneath them. But the servant leadership approach flips it around, really, because it's about prioritizing the well-being of those that we are called to serve. And so it flips it around so that the bigwigs are actually on the bottom, and everyone that they serve, from their employees to the community at large, is above them. And it
This just
flips
makes
around
sense.
that model. Well, in my mind, I don't understand why it would be any other way. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I really don't understand in what form of reality any other thought process makes sense. Because I think about when I was a student and I endured institutional abuse in an academic setting, I look at that situation, I'm like, wait a minute, those people worked for me, right? It was my tuition
Yeah,
that
you're paying
paid
for
their
them.
salaries.
You're
So
paying them.
therefore, my well-being should have taken priority over whatever promotion that they wanted to get or whatever they were looking to do, whatever motive that they had. And it's that way in any institution, in any position, right? I mean, the government's supposed to work for us.
This is so
It's
true.
it's supposed to be about the people, and it's just mind-boggling to me because I don't understand it. But we end up with very selfish, kind of self-serving, narcissistic people in leadership roles, and it's extremely dangerous, by the way. Like, it's very, very dangerous. But that was the basis of the TED Talk, and just talking about being accountable, being approachable, being teachable, being honest, be willing to admit when you make a mistake, be quick to make it right, and don't try to dodge the consequences of your actions. Don't try to evade responsibility. Put the people that you serve first, bottom line. And so that was the basis of the TED Talk. Um, and it was born out of my own pain, right? Out of my own experiences as someone that has struggled at the hands of professionals and leaders in institutions that I trusted 3 times, right? We had the therapist, we had the church leader, and we had the professor, unfortunately. And all of those abusive, unhealthy dynamics unfortunately mimicked my childhood, right? Because we know that children who go through abuse and trauma during childhood, that becomes familiar. So a lot of
Yeah.
people gravitate during adulthood to those very similar relationships. And coming to understand that was part of my own healing journey. But it was a healthcare facility, a religious organization, and academia. And I talk about all of that in the TED Talk because it was born out of my own very painful experiences that brought me into this like spiritual awakening, if you will. And God started speaking to me about how a person's ability to be a truly effective leader is directly linked to their ability and capacity to love others. And that was the first quote. I wrote that on my Facebook one day, and that turned into my TED Talk. I wrote an article on Medium about institutional abuse. When did abuse become normal and integrity a lost virtue? And lo and behold, my TEDx talk was born, and it was just born out of all of these experiences that I can't believe that I've had at 25 years old.
Wow, wow. That's a lot, really. So, can you share those examples of abuse that you have experienced?
Yeah. So when you look at abuse comes in many forms. And I think that there's a misconception that people hear abuse and they immediately think physical or sexual abuse, like some types of abuse that are more in your face, right? And are the physical aspects. But over the last 7 years, I've learned so much in my own experiences and my own research about the more insidious forms of abuse, right? Psychological abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, even spiritual abuse, financial abuse. There's actually a thing called legal abuse. And this is where narcissistic people, toxic people, basically the perpetrator of a situation, the abuser, if you will, uses the legal system as a means of controlling the victim. And that happens in domestic violence situations when there's custody cases and they will file false charges to try to get the kids taken away. Or there's a term that's called reactive abuse. And that is where the perpetrator will poke and prod and harass the victim. It's like poking a bear with a stick. What do you think is going to happen if you poke a bear with a stick repeatedly? It's going to get angry and it's going to rip your face off. And so the abuser, the perpetrator, will harass and torment the victim to the point where they can't take it anymore and they finally react, and then they take the victim's response and they flip it around on them. And a lot of times at that point, the victim doesn't even know why they're acting the way they're acting, but the perpetrator will use the law and say, look, she's crazy, he's crazy, they're yelling at me, they went off at me, and they just flip the whole thing around. And that's actually called DARVO. I'm getting to use a lot of my terms tonight. So DARVO is called
Wow.
deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. And that's exactly what these people do. They're confronted with their bad behavior, they deny it, they attack the person that's confronting them, and then they reverse the victim offender roles, right? So then they make the victim the problem, and then they make themselves the victim. And so I've learned so much about all of these dynamics, power dynamics, abuse tactics, ethics, and all of that over the last 7 years. And so the types of abuse that I endured were the more insidious types. They were very difficult to prove, but it was all emotional abuse, psychological abuse, spiritual abuse with the church, which was pretty painful, a lot of gaslighting, which is an emotional manipulation tactic that a perpetrator uses to make the victim question their own reality, right? Triangulation, when a perpetrator brings other people in to the situation, smear campaigns, when the perpetrator will completely just slander someone. They will just take someone and just ruin their reputation, spread lies and rumors because that discredits the person. So when they come forward to speak out, they now look like the problem because there's been all these lies. And I've experienced all of this. And it was bad enough when it was my own family doing it to me. But then when I grew up and it was the therapist, the church leader, and the professor, the healthcare facility, the religious organization, and the academic department, that was even worse. Because institutions are supposed to care about people. People in leadership roles in these institutions are supposed to care about people. They didn't care about me, right? It was as narcissistic as it can get, and it mimicked my family dynamic. And so I've been on the receiving end of smear campaigns. I've been gaslit. I've been lied to. I've been gossiped about. I've had the police called on me in very unfair scenarios. It's absurd, but these are the types of people that are running our institutions, and that's frightening.
Wow. It's too heavy.
It's very heavy.
Good thing you recognize it, because sometimes we could be confused and we could question ourselves,
Oh, I did.
like,
I did.
was it my fault? Was it
Do you
me?
know how long I lived in that?
Right?
Do you know how long it took me to get
How
out of
long?
that? I
How
gaslit
long?
myself, right? But that's what was done to me as a kid. So I just grew up thinking that I'm the problem all the time because when I was a kid, I was the problem all the time. You see how all of that carried into my adulthood and just repeated itself? It took me a long time to get to this place where I'm like, no, No, I'm not the problem. Now, I had issues, right? I had things that I needed to heal. I was wounded, but that's not a crime. Okay, being wounded is not a
Yeah.
crime. Just because someone is incapacitated on the sidewalk does not give a thief the right to come over and steal their wallet, right? Just because I had vulnerabilities and insecurities and wounds from my childhood did not give these people the right to exploit those for their own gain. It just didn't, right? It took me a long time to get to the place of confidence that I am in now, where I can look at these situations and say, you were the problem, and you were the problem, and you were the problem. Now, did I bring my own issues into that dynamic? I did, right? And there were some things that
Mm-hmm.
I needed to be accountable for. There were better ways that I could have handled things. But the bottom line is that abuse is about power. So, with a therapist, a bunch of church leaders, and a college department, can somebody tell me where my power was? Because I didn't have any. They were in power over me. There was an unequal, unfair power dynamic, and I was under them, just like when I was a kid, because my family had the power over me. And so it's taken me a long time to stop second guessing myself. I'm sure that all of these people that were using my vulnerabilities to their advantage are not happy with the healed version of Kelsey, because I'm not tolerating it anymore and I'm calling everybody out left and right and I'm holding them accountable. They liked me better when I was a people pleaser. They liked me better when I was a doormat. They liked me better when I was quiet and I didn't have the confidence that I have. But they were also moving shady in the background, thinking that I didn't see it, thinking that I didn't know, thinking that, oh, Kelsey's so kind and she's so sweet and she's so innocent and she doesn't know. And even if she does know, she's kind, right? So it was my kindness and my genuineness that was exploited until I finally had enough and the phoenix rose out of me and everybody said, oh my goodness, where did that come from? Who is this? Because I will never, ever tolerate behavior like that ever again. I don't know that a narcissistic person will try to touch me now with a 10-foot pole, because I'm not
Wow.
having it. I'm not doing it. I can spot it now from a mile away. I'm not in that vulnerable place that I was in. I've done so much inner work. I'm doing the work every single day. And it's just very disheartening to me and very frightening to me that we truly have people like this leading our institutions, teaching our children, caring for our sick family members. It's so scary.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who is in power can abuse us.
Absolutely.
It can be our parents, it
Absolutely.
can be our spouse, it can be whoever around us who thought they're
Absolutely.
bigger than us, right? But this is a very interesting topic because you mentioned
I
about
love this topic. Can you
narcissism.
tell? Can you
Yeah,
tell? This
yeah.
is my calling, right? This is what God has put me on earth to do. Just to preface everybody, sorry, it's gotten very dark here and my lighting situation is not ideal. So we're losing light. So I'm just gonna get really close. Hi. I'm just gonna get really
Yeah,
close. Oh, we're dropping things now. I'm just gonna get really close to the camera here and
it's okay.
but
You still look pretty.
the
So
the
yeah,
lighting situation's gone downhill. But this is what I believe that I am really called to do. I have this innate ability. First of all, I enjoy ruffling feathers. I think it's fun. Ruffling feathers, stirring pots, and rocking boats. I think it's great. I love to take people that think that they are just above everybody else and like really rain on their parade and just take a pin and just pop their bubble right open. I have a problem with injustice. I have a problem with corruption. It's that righteous anger that the Bible talks about. And I've
mm-hmm.
seen now that God has taken me and he's put me in these environments and he has used me to expose these people, because I'm not the only Kelsey. There's other people that they've done this to, right? What about the next vulnerable young person that goes through these doors and needs help, right? And gets exploited by these people are dangerous, right? It's not okay. And so I look at these situations and I realize that it wasn't coincidental that I ended up there, because God put me there with a purpose, because he knew I wouldn't be silent. And so I have a knack, it seems, for, I have a lot of spiritual gifts that Holy Spirit has given me. I have high discernment. I can smell bull from a mile away. I see things, I pick up on things, and I've used those gifts that Holy Spirit has given me, the wisdom and the discernment, to really make sure that these people are held accountable and that they don't get away with it. So God strategically placed me in each of those situations. And that's part of the reason why I want to go to law school, because a lot of what attorneys do is they expose corruption and they defend the little people, the people like you or I that these institutions are supposed to benefit and work for. But unfortunately, abuse like this happens all the time in every institution. And it's more times than not people that are vulnerable in their own way that end up being exploited. And so that's my long-term goal, is to get that law degree and represent people like me when I was younger and vulnerable and impressionable and was exploited by these institutions.
Okay, okay. I have a very important question here because
Yes.
I have mentioned that, sometimes you couldn't recognize this, that somebody's already taking advantage of you or manipulating you and, trying to use this power. So, how are they gonna recognize? How are we going to recognize that, you know, this is not right? I need to make this right.
You know,
Um,
it's
how are we gonna recognize that? Because sometimes we thought that
yeah,
it's okay and that it was my fault, and
no.
we do that, right?
Right. No.
So
You know,
go
when you're
ahead.
in it, when you are actively being emotionally abused and you have someone manipulating you and jerking you around and playing mind games with you, it can be very difficult to see it, especially if the individual that is going through it has a history of trauma, right? Because they probably already blame themselves, right? All those dynamics play a role in the individual that is being abused. But one big thing for me, before I even get that, let me preface, if
Mm-hmm.
you see red flags, take my advice, run away from them. This is not a carnival. I don't know what I was thinking, right? Like, I saw the red flags in a lot of cases, but I ran toward them instead of running away from them. Don't do that. Run from the red flags. But one big red flag is
Mm-hmm.
if someone's actions don't add up with their words, you might want to pay attention to that, right? If someone is saying one thing and then their behavior is showing you the exact opposite, back away, because there's something wrong there. If you're ever dealing with an individual who negates your experiences and you know very well that something happened a certain way, and they tell you that it didn't, and they tell you that you made that up or you're crazy, that's gaslighting. So if someone is going out of their way to make you question your own reality and you start to feel like you're going crazy, that's gaslighting. Pay attention to that. Um, red flags. What else we have for red flags? Passive aggressive communication, um, passive aggressive remarks, someone that is unwilling to have a direct conversation with you, even if you flat out ask them, like, can we have this conversation? And they're not willing to come to the table and they're passive aggressive, that's a red flag, right? And I saw these things, and there were things that I could see were off and that were not right, but I ignored those things, right? And so those are some of the things that you can look for, but your body will also tell you. Your nervous system picks up on behavior like that. And I remember when I was in school with that department, and I would go into that department and I would have like big emotional reactions, and I didn't know why I was having them, but my nervous system was trying to tell me to look out. There's something wrong, right? And I just wasn't getting it. And at the end, I was so confused. And then I started to wake up. And then I started to ask questions. And then I started to open up the closet a little bit. And lo and behold, they had skeletons in there, and the skeletons were starting to fall out. So I pulled the door
Ooh.
open and I let all the skeletons fall out on the floor. And I said, "Oh, you guys have a big mess here. Good luck. Good luck cleaning that up." And I said what I needed to say, and I did what I needed to do, and I got the heck out. And I left them to clean up their mess, because these are grown people in some instances, in my experiences, with PhDs. These are people with doctorate degrees. We literally teach children, right? When you think about narcissistic behavior, children are as narcissistic as they come. That's part of development, childhood development, because children are reliant on other people to meet their needs. So the parent of a
Mm-hmm.
child, not in my situation, right, because the roles were reversed, but when you have a child, your primary role in that child's life is to meet their need. That's what you're there to
Mm-hmm.
do. As children grow up and they develop their personality and they learn and they grow, over time into adulthood, those narcissistic tendencies kind of die down, right? But we teach children about accountability because accountability is a learned skill. Being able to take responsibility for your actions and understand that with every action, there is a consequence, whether it's a good one or a bad one. If your child runs out into the street, you have to teach them that they can't do that because there could be very negative consequences. It's not safe, right? If your child lies to you and you catch them in a lie, there are consequences for that. We teach them about accountability because when you're an adult, you need that. Why are there so many adults out here that don't know how to take personal accountability for themselves in their 50s with PhDs, right? These are things that we teach kids. And to have leaders in these roles who don't know how to do that, how are
It's,
you teaching at a university? How are you guiding young people if you can't, when you lead by example. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anybody else, because leadership is actually an internal process. So I don't get it, but these are some of the things that I've seen and that I've experienced, and unfortunately I know very well that it's far too common.
yeah, I mean, sometimes so they're already there. They're older than us. They have
I don't get it.
more degrees than
I don't
us,
get
but
it.
then, right? But then they they are not healing.
Well,
They
that's
have
that's it. It's a lack
issues.
of healing. It's unhealed wounds, which
Hmm.
most of the time will go back to childhood. But it's just, it's mind blowing to me because
It's scary.
it's
It's scary.
dangerous. It's very scary because it's dangerous. These are people's lives. When you are
Yeah.
in a leadership position, these are people's lives. It's not an inanimate object that you're selling at a store. These are people's lives. And it's just not the way that it is supposed to be by any means. And again, it just starts with us. It starts with all
Yeah.
of us and deciding that I'm going to do better. And when I lead people, I'm going to teach them to do better, right? And eventually, hopefully, I always like to point out we're in a very interesting pivotal time, especially in our country, because when you look at a lot of the people in leadership roles, whether it's institutions or the government, politics, a lot of those people are older.
Yeah.
Eventually, these people are going to retire and they
Mm-hmm.
are going to leave. Not soon enough for me, for some of them, right? But eventually they're going to retire. And it's going to be the younger generations, my generation, millennials, right? That's going to start to step up and take over these leadership roles. So we're at a really pivotal time right now to make it a priority to raise up healthy leaders, because eventually they are going to take over everything. And it's just such a pivotal time right now, because my generation, the generation underneath me, if we teach people right, eventually we're gonna take these positions of office in politics. We're gonna take these positions in universities, and if we do it right and we play our cards right, we can change the trajectory that we are on by starting with how we choose to lead.
Yeah. I think, it starts with family.
A
It
hundred
starts
percent, it
with
starts in the home.
at
It starts
home.
in the home. We have
At
too
home.
much. I believe the root cause of all the issues that we have in society is trauma. I believe that childhood trauma, unaddressed, unhealed childhood trauma, is the root of all these problems. Truly,
Totally
because
agree. I totally
if
agree with
if
you.
we had more trauma prevention and we actually helped people get to the root of their trauma and avoid that as much as possible in childhood, I don't believe we would have as many of the issues as we had, because people are walking around in adult bodies, but they're still wounded children because they
Amen.
haven't done the inner work. So people are just walking around acting like wounded children, and it's not a conscious thing. They just don't know any different because they're unhealed and they're wounded. So if we could help people heal, and we could, reduce some of the trauma that our children are experiencing, and really actually help people get to the root of their problems, we may not have narcissistic, unhealthy, wounded people in leadership. I don't know.
Exactly.
No,
Like that's 100%
it's
true. I
not
totally
rocket
agree with
science
that.
to me, but apparently it is to other people.
Indeed,
I don't know.
awareness is the first step.
Absolutely.
Because some of us would just go, 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 and we thought it's normal that this is okay. I'm good. I'll just, go with the flow.
Absolutely.
And we did
Right.
not pause and recognize that we have issues that we need to deal with.
Absolutely. I mean, self-awareness is the first step. If you're not
Yeah,
aware of something, you can't change it. If you're
true.
not consciously aware of something, you can't change it. But just because people are aware of things doesn't mean they take the steps to change it, because it's
That's
hard, it
true.
hurts, it's painful, right? But self-awareness really is the first step in being able to say, oh, I have some things that I need to deal with. And then taking the right steps to be able to deal with them, right? But if you're not aware of something, you can't fix it. It's impossible, you know?
So, yeah, totally. So, yeah, I think the mission now is to let the people know because
And
that's the
that's
first
what I'm
step.
here to do. And I'll tell you what, I'm making a lot of people angry
It's
as I'm doing it.
okay.
But guess what? I don't care, because I work for God. I answer to God. I work for God. I don't care what people think of me. I care what God thinks of me. I don't answer to man. I answer to God.
You
Um,
live by the audience of one,
I
and
do,
by that,
because
yeah.
somebody's got to do it. I was a truth teller when I was a kid, and the truth teller in a narcissistic environment, oh boy, they have
They
a
don't
rough
like
go
it.
around. No, they have the truth teller in narcissistic environments have a really rough existence,
Life.
because
Yeah.
they become the black sheep and the scapegoat. And I was scapegoated in all three of my adult experiences with the institutions, right? Um, but I was always the truth teller. I was the one sitting in my childhood home as a kid saying, "What are you doing? This is wrong. This is wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong." Right? It's like Oprah. You get a
Yeah.
car, and you get a car, and you get a car, and it's just Kelsey here, like, you're wrong, and this is wrong, and you're screwed up, and you need help, and you better deal with this, and this is messed up, and this is not functional, and this is not right. I basically walk through the world doing that in these extreme situations, because I don't want to turn a blind eye. If I turn a blind eye to these things, God's going to ask me one day when I stand before him why I didn't say anything. He's going to ask me, "You knew, and you saw it, and you knew it was wrong." I don't want that on me. I don't want that on me. I am unable to be a bystander, because the bystanders are actually worse than the original perpetrators. When I was a kid, you know how many bystanders there were, and I needed help, and everybody just, it's like the bystander effect. Oh, I won't help them because someone else will. I don't want to get involved. I don't. So they just stand back and they watch the
They're
abuse
passive.
happen, and they watch it happen. They're guilty by association. I don't want to stand before God and have him tell me that I was guilty by association. I don't want that. I don't want that blood on my hands, and I don't want it. So I
God bless your heart, Kelsey. We need
I
more people like you. We need this
there's
new generation to be like you.
you know it's funny. Sometimes I think to myself, if more people were like me, we would have less problems. And that's not to toot my own horn. But when you think about how change happens, it's when a bunch of people stand together and use their
Amen.
voice. But people are afraid to use their voice. They're afraid of these institutions. They're afraid of people because of the way that I got treated. I don't know why anybody would want to stand up and call something out when they're going to end up on the target of a smear campaign and have their reputation ruined, right? It's not an easy thing to do, but it's a necessary thing to do. But there's also that verse in Proverbs that talks about being careful when you're calling someone out on their foolishness. And that's also something that I've learned, because when you call people out on their nonsense and their foolishness, or I like to say their tomfoolery, they get angry and you become the target. So I've had to learn a lot of skills as to how do I know when to call it out and speak, and how do I know when to walk away? And how do I know when
Hmm.
to say, okay, hands up, I'm done, right? It takes a lot of discernment. You
Can you
know,
share it with us?
yeah. So basically, if other people are at risk, I won't be quiet. If it's just me and another individual and it's more of like a relational issue, I'll kind of just let it roll off my back because I don't care. And if people don't want to hear it, they're not going to hear it. The line in the sand for me that I will step right over is if other people are at risk of being harmed, right? With the therapist, that person has a license. There's a board
Mm-hmm.
of examiners for a reason. I needed to report that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they have a duty to protect the public. I look at the church. Um, how frightening and dangerous is it to bring people into a religious institution like that and have abusive people in leadership? And in that situation, there were people before me that they did the exact same things to. And what happens about the next person, right? How do we have professors and deans terrorizing their students, gossiping about their students? If they treated me like that, how many other students did they do that to behind closed doors? The only difference with me is that I figured it out and they didn't think that I would, but I did, right? So what happens about the next vulnerable student that walks through those doors that thinks that those people care about them and they don't care jack about them, right? It's just vile to me. I can't even imagine being a professor and sitting around and slandering and making fun of and talking bad about my students. Mind blowing, right? Like, I just don't get it. So that's
That's
where
not
I draw the
right.
line. That's where I draw the line. If it's just me and it's impacting me and somebody's just foolish and they're going to live their life that way and it's not going to necessarily hurt anybody, walk away. But if the general public is at risk because of these people's behaviors and there's a lot of people in on it and it's more of an institutional matter, a dire matter where people can be harmed, that's when I step up.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, yeah, if there's a lot of people who will be involved and who will be abused
Right.
too, then yeah, it's right when we
Yeah,
stand up for with our truth.
absolutely.
So, wow. Yeah, I mean, in a regular basis, these happens everywhere. Our
Yeah.
workplace, at
Oh,
home.
workplace abuse is the same thing. I
Oh
just went through
yeah.
it, right? It's the same concept. Unfortunately, these people are everywhere, right? And the first time that I went through it, I thought that it was like a freak incident. I didn't think that people like that could actually exist. And then the second time felt like deja vu. And then the third time was painful because I had to step out of denial and I had to say, oh, wow, like there's two patterns here. There's my pattern and then there's the institutional pattern. If I keep ending up in the same situation over and over again, there's got to be a reason why. And that's mine. That's my accountability to take for myself to heal the part of me that was
Mm-hmm.
attracted to that and that was allowing myself to be treated like that. I allowed people to treat me bad, right? I have to own that, right? But then there's the pattern that I saw with the institutions because it was the same concept in each situation, in each environment. It was the same thing, just repeating itself. And that's when I realized that we really do have an institutional problem. And
For
that's a leadership
sure.
problem. It's a
For
leadership
sure.
problem, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, wow, yeah. But what about if it happens at home? What if your spouse, your husband, or your wife is doing that to you? Because it's
That
very basic,
that
right?
is even more difficult. So when you think about in a lot of cases like in a job, well, in most cases you can leave a job and you can find another job.
True.
I left UNLV, right? I worked there and then I didn't work there anymore. I got away. I was able to get away. I was able to remove myself. I left the church. I found a
Mm,
new therapist. Now, the damage to me had already been done, but I was able
mm.
to get out. When you are in a home, whether
Yeah,
it's a spouse or there's a child with abusive parents, that's a hell of a lot harder because it's a very sticky, dangerous situation. These people are dangerous. You got to understand that. Narcissists are dangerous. And I don't say that to be derogatory in any way. I understand that they too have been through their own trauma, but it's very dangerous. And that's very
Mhm.
hard to escape, because if there's a wife that's being abused by her husband and she has kids and she's afraid she's going to lose her kids, and where am I going to go? And is he going to kill me if I try to leave? This is the
Mhm.
reality. And this is where the domestic violence piece comes into the equation, right? I mean, my mom hit me a couple times when I was a kid. I dealt with some of that. But as a kid, I couldn't get out, right? I had nowhere I could go. But there was nobody physically abusing me in the institutions. It was all kind of flying under the radar.
Emotional, no,
Right, that emotional
psychological.
piece. But
Yeah.
marriages and domestic situations, dating situations, domestic home situations, that's scary. And it's even more difficult to navigate that. And law enforcement doesn't do a very good job. A lot of these things are not understood. And it's a lot more difficult to navigate a situation like that, for sure.
That's really true. And I know a lot of women, men or women, and children are
Yes.
suffering and
Yeah.
sacrificing. I mean, this is where all of these childhood trauma came
Yes.
from the family, from home.
Everything
And
starts at home. And unfortunately, we live in a society right now where people think it's like the school's job to raise their kid. No, right?
no.
If a child is coming to school and they're having behavioral problems, there's something going on, right? You might want to look into that. And that's where I think trauma prevention in childhood is important, because a lot of times if a child has PTSD or they've been through something traumatic, that trauma is going to manifest itself and show itself through behavior, because children don't have the dialogue, they don't have the vocabulary to be able to voice what is happening to them. And a lot of times they're afraid to. So it's going to show itself in behavioral problems. But what happens is those kids go to school and they act out and they show signs of um, defiance or behavioral problems. And then they get sent to a shrink, and then they get put on drugs and they're given a label, and now they're a problem child. And those are the kids that slip through the cracks, because what they really have is a trauma problem, not a mental health problem. They're not mentally ill, right? A lot of the
Mm.
times that does happen, but a lot of the times that's a trauma problem. And the teachers and the individuals in the schools are not trained. This is why trauma informed care and trauma informed practices are so vitally important, because those kids end up falling through the cracks because they just turn into the problem children, and then they rebel even more because they're
Yeah.
not getting the help that they need, because the people around them don't understand that they've been through a traumatic event and they're crying out for help.
Yeah, wow, this is really good. This is really good, Kelsey. I can talk to you forever. I'm
By the
telling
time we're
you.
done, there's not going to be any light left in this place. It's just completely dark now.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, everybody. We're in the dark. I
This
just
content.
moved. I just moved back to Connecticut from Las Vegas, and my stuff just got here. We just got it in the storage unit. I haven't even had any time, so I have a very, very unprofessional setup right now.
No, you're good. You just come closer to the camera, like we can
I
see
don't want
your
to get too close.
face.
I don't want to scare anybody.
But yeah, I mean, these content is really, really good. We've um touched a lot of topics,
I
really
love this.
important
I don't know.
topics.
I'm so passionate, like getting to dive into this stuff. Like this just, this past week, maybe a week or 2 weeks, I've been struggling, right? Because I've kind of I fell on the money bandwagon for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
because I just started my business, and I'm sure that we'll get into that a little bit. But I know that my capacity to earn is going to be very high once I get this off the ground. And I've kind of gotten a little bit excited about the idea of not being broke, right? That's exciting to me, and being able to be comfortable. And I think somewhere along the way, I got stuck on that, right? Between moving across the country and kind of depleting a lot of my financial resources along the way, getting back here, and then worrying about how am I going to do all of this. The idea of being able to bring in income is really nice to me. To know that there was going to come a time where I'm not going to have to worry anymore when my business takes off and things start to go in a good direction. But I've kind of gotten lost in that. And my spiritual father, Mark, gave me a book when I stopped to see him in Oklahoma on the way back. And I have it right here. Start with
Mhm.
why, right? And this book is
Oh,
about leadership
wow.
and knowing your why. And I picked it up on Saturday because somewhere along the way, these last couple weeks, I started to forget my why. And I started to get
Mm.
caught up on more of the materialistic aspect of
Mhm.
what's going to come from this. And so I had to pause, I had to hit the brakes, and I had to stop. And I had to go all the way back to the beginning and remember why I'm doing what I'm doing and what this is really about, because this is about people. We just had this conversation. It's so easy to fall into the trap because it was kind
Yeah.
of happening to me. And I'm like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like how I'm thinking. I don't like how I'm
Uh-huh.
acting. I'm lacking a little bit of humility, and I had to check myself. And so I took
Uh-huh.
myself all the way back and I opened the book. And this conversation is my why, and the passion that you see behind my words, and all of this information that I'm getting to share, the educational piece of this interaction, all of these things, this is my why. This is where the passion comes from. So this is very, very heartwarming to get to have done tonight, because it is still right on that theme of, okay, Kelsey, remember your why. Remember
Yeah.
your why. Don't let it go to your head. Don't get a big ego. Don't get stuck on money, right? And so this is my why. All the passion that you see behind this, the TED Talk, the experiences, the advocacy, like this is the why for me.
Yeah, and you're right. It's so easy to get sidetracked and to get distracted with some other things, and then actually, you will feel that when you are not in alignment, when you are
Right. Absolutely.
aware. Yeah, and it's just so good to be able to pause,
Yeah.
figure it out again, knowing your why again, and going back, because this is
Absolutely.
not all about money. This is all
Right.
about serving others. And if
Yes.
God will bless us with too much wealth to
Right.
enjoy from Him on this planet, then that's just an icing of the cake.
Absolutely.
Because
Right.
because what truly matters is our character. God doesn't care
Right.
about our career. He is more
Absolutely.
interested of our character, of how we become through the
Absolutely.
experiences that we are going through.
Right. And what we do with what he trusts us with, right? When
Amen.
God can trust you with little, he'll give you more and more and more. Because if he can trust you and to be faithful with the small things, he will give you the big things, right? If we're good stewards of what we have, he will give us more, right? And if we do well with what he gives us, right, and we give that back, um, that's the way that is, right? If you can't handle little things, God's not going to give you big things, right? So it's a journey, right? And I think that this is such a good conversation because I'm not exempt. None of
Yeah.
us are exempt from these
Yes.
struggles. I have
Yes.
moments where I lack humility. I have
Mm-hmm.
moments where I need to check myself and humble myself. I have to apologize to people all the time, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't get up on stages and talk about leadership and preach things that I don't live, right? And if I fall short and I'm not living them, right? I am not exempt from these things. None of us are. None of us are exempt from the temptations and the struggles that come with life. And I'll be the first to tell you that, right? Like I struggle with lots of stuff all the time. Um, I'm not always the most loving person, right? How a
Mm-hmm.
loving approach to leadership can change the world. And um, I have to work on that sometimes. That's something that I fall short on all the time, right? That idea of falling short of the glory of God, we all do, right? But it's something that I aim to improve in all the time. And that's all that we can do, right? Is to wake up every single day and try your best to be better than you were the day before. And if you fall short, you make that right. And then you wake up the next day and you say, okay, you know what? Today's a new day and I'm going to start over and I'm going to try again today. Right. And just one step at a time, one thing at a time. It's not, what is that saying? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Is
Yes.
that the
This is
saying?
not a sprint. This is a
Not a sprint, it's a
marathon.
marathon. And there's
Yeah.
that scripture where Paul talks about running the race, right?
Yeah.
Finishing the race to
Finishing
the
the
end.
race.
That's all what we're here doing, right? None of us are better than anybody else, and none of us are exempt from the things that we're talking about. But as long as we're self-aware and we're able to be honest with ourselves and humble ourselves and check ourselves and have people around us that will check us and that will help us be the best versions of ourselves. Because if you surround yourself with yes people all the time, I hate to tell you, but you're going in a bad path.
Yeah, for
Bad
sure.
company corrupts good character. We got a lot of good sayings and stuff going on here right now. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
associations determine your destinations, right?
This is just so much stuff that we're learning today, and what an honor, Kelsey.
Thank you.
You are a woman who is very young, but with so much of wisdom that you can share to the world, and I'm
Holy
so proud
Spirit's
of
been
you.
really good to me in the wisdom department.
Amen,
He
amen.
really has.
And
God's been good to me in the wisdom department. I will say that.
yeah, that's true. And so, yeah, like you talk about, sometimes we get distracted, and I'm not exempted to that.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm so guilty. But whenever that happens to me, I check on myself and like, no, 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 this is not right. I go back to delight yourself in the Lord, and He will
Yes.
give you the
Mhm.
desires of your heart, and seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything will be
All these
added
things will be
unto
given unto you.
you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my favorite verses in the Bible that keeps me on track and checks my heart. Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so good to always ask to have purity, to have pure heart and good motives and intentions for other people. Because sometimes we can be so selfish and
It's
just think
easy.
of ourselves.
It happens.
Really, yeah,
It's easy. I
it's
mean,
very
this
easy.
last 2 weeks showed me that. Like, okay, what? Oh God, I have so many scriptures coming to my mind.
Go ahead.
Um, oh no, why can't I think of this one? It's one of the 12 steps in Celebrate Recovery. Oh no, my Celebrate Recovery people are gonna be like, what the heck? Um, be careful when you think that you are standing firm, because you might fall. Right? Be
Oh,
careful when you
wow.
think. Be careful when you think you're there. Be careful when you think you got everything figured out and you think you're good and you think you're strong,
You're
because
not.
that's when no, 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 that's the best time for the enemy to sneak in and you fall flat on your face. And that's how that happens. And so I think that all of us, no matter what your beliefs, making it a habit. Check yourself, check yourself, check yourself again, right? Have a baseline. Have a baseline of character, right? That you know that you want to embody, and constantly check yourself to those standards and make sure, am I still there? Am I still there? Do I need to fall back some? Right? I just life is a journey. You never make it, right? I've healed
Mm,
significantly, but that doesn't mean I still don't have healing to do. But
yeah.
God can still use us, right? God can still use us in our brokenness, because his power is made perfect in our weakness, right? This is so anointed right now. Holy Spirit's coming out of me. I'm just vibing. I'm vibing here in the dark. There's no light in here.
And
There's
there's
no
one
light in
verse.
here. And
There's still one verse that I love to share. And yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with it. For sure you are, but this is in Romans 8. This always reminds me whenever I'm becoming selfish, and think of my own good. I go back into this verse. It says, when you live by the Spirit, you will live forever. But when you live by your flesh, you will die.
yeah, absolutely.
So let's always be reminded, am I in flesh? Am I living in
Yeah.
flesh
Amen.
with my earthly desires and earthly, all these greediness
Yeah.
and selfishness that we just want more things for ourselves? Or am I living by the Spirit?
Right. And when I was just talking, I didn't plan this, right? But when I was just talking about that baseline, well, the Bible tells us what that baseline is: love, joy, peace,
Peace.
patience, kindness, self control, right? Those are the fruits of the Spirit. That's the baseline, right? That's that level playing field that we are aiming to walk in, to achieve, right? And so when you fall away from that, oh, I really wasn't all that loving. Let me recenter. Let me get back to my baseline. That is something that I'm really trying to start to make a habit of. Check myself again, check myself a third time, right? Because what I don't ever want to do is be a hypocrite.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk in hypocrisy where I'm shaking my fist at people, but I'm not living what I'm preaching, and I'm walking around calling everybody else out, but I have a log in my eye, right? There's a huge plank in my eye, right? So it's just everything is a process, and that's something that one of my biggest lessons in coming back from Las Vegas back to Connecticut has been I've become a lot less attached to material things, right? I had some of my stuff moved, and unfortunately, even after having a attorney look at the moving
Mm-hmm.
contract, they still screwed me over. So they charged me much more than I was supposed to pay, and that was scary because it wiped out the rest of my savings. And I'm literally starting from scratch here. I have what I have, and I'm nannying part-time while I build my business. But there's something very humbling about that. And God's been speaking to me about humble beginnings. And through this process, like I live out in the sticks, right? I live in a very rural part of Connecticut, and there's this piece on my tire, like right above my tire, that's like an aesthetic piece, and it just covers the top part. I'm not a car person. It fell off. Okay, it looks really bad, right? That's what happens when you live out in the sticks. Like there's nothing out here, stuff falls apart. But this is helping me detach a little bit, because before that would have bothered me. My car, right? It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't really matter. So I've learned a valuable lesson about material items. And when I was in Vegas, I had a beautiful condo that I rented. I mean, I have really nice stuff, and I took the stuff with me, but I came to the point in Vegas where I was miserable. And I realized, what's the point of having stuff if there's nobody to share it with? Right. And so I've
Mm.
become much more detached from this material, right? Obviously, I'm excited about not being broke.
Of
Yay.
course.
Right. I don't want to have to worry about stuff. And of course, the more money that I have, the more resources that I have, the more I can give away. But I realized that material items can be replaced, but
Mm-hmm.
people can't be replicated. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
struggled with in Vegas. I really struggled to find solid people. Like good people are really, really, really hard to come by. And when I got back to Connecticut, I feel silly, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
realized like I didn't know what I had here. And part of that was just because I was a teenager, right? That's just part of growing up. But I realized like good people are hard to come by, and you can't just replace or replicate people. And I would so much rather have less and be in an
Mm-hmm.
environment where I'm loved and cared for and I have support than have a bunch of stuff and be miserable. Because even if you have a lot of stuff, look how many people in the world are miserable. All right. So these are just a lot of the lessons that I've learned since I got back um, from Las Vegas. And I remember being in Vegas, and there were so many people that were like, "Oh, my spiritual daughter, my adopted daughter, my spiritual daughter." First of all, save it, because I didn't really matter to those people. But then I stopped, in Oklahoma, and I saw Susie and Mark, and it was like, wow, if anybody has like a donkey head that I could borrow
Mm-hmm.
and just wear around town, because I feel like an ass, right? I feel silly because every single thing that I wanted and I was chasing in Vegas, I already had. I just couldn't see it. And then I got back here, and all the love and support that I was seeking in Vegas, I already had. It's right here. I
Mm.
just got out of Dodge so quick after my mom died that I didn't see it. And then I got back here and I realized like I have all the things that I was searching for there. It's always been right here. I had some growing up to do. I had some maturing to do. And this is a process that happens for a lot of young people younger, right? But because my development got stuck emotionally due to the trauma, I'm just now making my way through a lot of these experiences that a lot of people have before me. But yet somehow I still have all this wisdom that some people in their 50s don't have, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
just an interesting process. So I learned a lot about materialism since leaving Vegas. What if the mover stole all my stuff? Oh,
Yeah.
well, I can get stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can fix that stupid plastic piece on my car out there that's lying
Mm-hmm.
around somewhere, right? But I would rather have people. And that takes me, want to circle back around to leadership. Leadership's about people.
Amen.
Yay!
Yeah.
Amen.
Oh, we touch a lot of important topics tonight,
Yeah.
which is very helpful. Like, a lot of people can take advantage of this content. It's so much. It's
I
very,
wish
very
there was more
rich.
light in
And
here.
sorry.
I wish there was more light in here.
Oh, it's okay. You
It's
are
so
the light.
heavy.
Kelsey,
How am
we
I?
don't need a light. You are the light.
Aw, that's actually kind of prophetic, isn't it? That's
Yes,
kind of sweet and prophetic. I like that.
it is.
Aw,
You are glowing your light to
thank you.
everyone
That kind
who's,
of makes me want to cry.
yeah, I mean, this is really, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank
You
you.
are you are glowing. You're
Thanks.
just glowing your light to everyone who's here. You guys, if you're watching this live, say something, say hello. Is this going is this doing are we doing great? And are we doing amazing job here? Hello everybody. Come on.
This has been great. This is definitely anointed. God is in the midst of this
I
conversation,
prayed.
and
I
these are the
prayed before we
best
start.
types of conversations to get to have. Truly, truly.
What an honor. Yeah, Nanette saying you
Thank
guys are
you.
doing amazing. Thank you, Nanette. We appreciate that.
Thank you for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you, Nanette. Thank you for watching. Yeah, and she said earlier that she got the audible version of the book, Start with Your Why, that you
Oh,
shared.
I guess
Yeah.
I'm promoting books now. Okay, maybe I'll get
Start.
sponsorships.
Yeah,
Okay.
start with Why by,
The
yeah.
other book I would like to promote, so it's on my website. It's on Amazon, but you can find the link to it on my website.
Okay, okay. Wait,
Um,
wait, 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 wait. Okay. Kelsey, where can people find you? You start with your website.
okay, sure.
Where can people find you and how can we support you? You are such a blessing.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah.
So I I moved back here and I started a business, and it's called Phoenix Rising Coaching and Consulting. And the phoenix bird is a mythological creature, right? It's a fictional creature, and it's known for its ability to transform itself. So the phoenix every so often just burns, just
Mm.
it's just burns to the ground, right? And then it rises from its own ashes, from the ashes of its own demise, and it's born again into a newer, stronger version of itself. It evolves and it just keeps evolving. And I picked that name because that's me. It's so much
Mm.
like me. I just keep evolving. And just when I think I've come to the end of myself and I can't go on and this is it, God shows up, right? And I evolve some more. And so that's the business. And I'm going to be, in addition to my speaking, because I'm really trying to get my public speaking career off the ground. That's really where my heart is. But in addition to that, doing some coaching. So we're both Maxwell team members,
Yeah.
and I am making my way through the program slowly but surely. And so I'm going to be starting my first mastermind for the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And so my long-term goal in the future, I want to do mindset coaching with women who are recovering from abuse and trauma and really help them get through their experiences and make sense of them and work on their mindset, right? Because that's something that I've been able to do and I want to give that back. And I also want to create a leadership development training program that's based on my TED Talk Servants First. And I want to take the servant leadership model and Maxwell's principles and my own experiences, and I want to create a training program that is specifically set up for leaders and professionals in institutions. So helping professionals, professors, and
Wow.
therapists, church leaders, deans, right? Institutional leaders, and have a lot of emphasis on ethics and boundaries and power dynamics and abuse dynamics and red flags and what to look for and how to intervene and the right approaches to take. And so I have big plans. And so I just launched my first website, which is just kelseyelizabethmatthews.com. And that is more of my personal branding, because right now what I'm doing is I'm branding myself while I'm branding my business, right? And of course, Phoenix Rising is intermingled with me, but when I speak as Kelsey Elizabeth, right? So I'm in the process of kind of merging the two. So yeah, KelseyElizabethMatthews.com. And eventually I will have a Phoenix Rising coaching website as well, but that'll come with time. And then on social media, I'm Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And those are all verified. So we'll have a little blue check mark next to my name, so you'll know that that's me. And as far as support, word of mouth goes a long way. The hardest part for me right now is I have the material and I'm ready to go, but I need clients, right? So the marketing aspect is hard, because I'm trying to figure out how to market this and who to market it to and how to get my name out. So I can work with individuals. I can do one-on-one coaching. Right now, like I said, it's primarily that personal growth and personal development and helping people really prioritize their growth and step into the best version of themselves. So I can do that one-on-one with people. I can also do individual coaching groups, but I can also do trainings and groups with leaders and organizations. So the options are there. I just need to know kind of, where are my clients, my people? Are you watching? So I'm really looking forward to starting the coaching. So I'm looking for clients. And then I have to go out back to my website and republish the newest version. And I'm not normally one to do this, but I do have a tab that I'm going to add on the page for some donations. So in the event that anyone hears my story or views my website or connects with me and they feel led, right? I'm not, there's no pressure, but if anybody feels led to make that investment into me while I grow this business, that'll be an option as well. So right now, really just word of mouth and sharing my content and securing clients. And this is not an easy road, right? I left my 9-to-5 job as a state employee and I walked away and I moved 3,000 miles across the country to start a business. And it's because God has led me in this direction. And so as God leads me, I am going to work as hard as I need to work to make it happen. And so if anybody felt led along the way to make any type of financial contribution, I would be very, very grateful. Again, no pressure, but sometimes God tells us to do things, and allowing people to bless me has been a lesson of mine, because if God puts it on someone's heart to bless someone, let them, right? Because then you're taking their blessing too. And so any funding that I do receive from anyone is going to go to the cost to launch Phoenix Rising. So startup costs, marketing, materials, things like that, just to kind of get myself off the ground and get going. So that's the big thing right now, is funding. Like I said, I'm a nanny and I'm doing that on the side. And so securing funding and securing clients right now is my biggest goal, whether that's for speaking or for coaching. As much as, money isn't the center of it, I got to bring in some revenue at some point if this thing's going to get off the ground. So that's where I'm at with the process right now.
Amazing. So, if they want to contact you and hire you as a coach, one-on-one coach, or invite you for their conferences, where can they connect with you? Are they just gonna go send you a message on Facebook, or
Sure.
is there a button on your? Are they just gonna go to your website? How can they do this easily?
Yeah. So social media is fine. You could find me on any of the social media platforms, message me that way. My email is Kelsey at KelseyElizabethMatthews.com. I
Give me a
think
sec.
we're
Let
going
me
to link
write
that.
that.
Okay, we're linking
Kelsey
that. Kelsey at
at Kelsey Elizabeth.
KelseyElizabethMatthews.com. But then also on my website, there's a contact page that I have set up for booking inquiries, right? So that also goes to my email. So you can email me directly, you can message me directly, or you can just go to my website and use that contact page. And that will, that's Kelsey Elizabeth Matthews.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again. Let's
So
do it again.
Kelsey
At
at
Kelsey Elizabeth.
KelseyElizabethMatthews.com. Yeah. Same as the website domain. So social
Matthews.com.
media, email, or just that contact page on the website, that'll come directly to me. I'm managing all my own booking right now. I made my own website. I'm doing everything. It feels good to build something from the ground up. I'm creating something out of nothing, right? And God's been speaking to me about humble beginnings. And I think it's a
Yes.
great place to be, because I'm going to be able to look back one day and look at what I created and where I was and where I end up and everything that God does in that in between. So
Yeah, I truly believe that right now you are creating a beautiful story.
thank you.
And you know that I am rooting for you.
Thank you.
If you ever need anything, just let me know. You know where to find me, Kelsey.
Thank
I'll
you.
send you my number too, you know?
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, like, wow, this has been a great day, a great content, a
Yeah.
great conversation. What can you say, like in summary, what can you say to our audience? Like, if there is one thing that you want them to take action
One.
right now as a coach, what is it?
As a coach,
Yeah, one thing that you want them to take action, like after this conversation they start to do it tomorrow, like, what do you want them to do? Like, how can they avoid all these, you can share
yeah.
about how can they avoid these abuse, or how can they get out of such a narcissistic relationship, stuff like that, anything.
I have two things. One of them is from a coaching perspective, for healing, and one of them is from a leadership perspective. So, for the individual that is struggling with the abuse, you're not alone. There is support for you. There is help for you. But the biggest thing, the biggest piece of advice that I could give is, as hard as it is, start to go inward, right? Start to go inward. Start to allow yourself to do that hard work of really looking internally and going internally and allowing yourself to feel those feelings and process those experiences, because the longer that you spend looking externally, the more time that you're going to spend stuck. Because what I did and what a lot of people do is they look for an external point of control and they try to control the things around them. But really, what we're doing when we do that is we're looking externally to fix an internal problem. Because if you don't like yourself, it doesn't matter who likes you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel good about yourself and you don't deal with your own deeply rooted wounds, you're going to stay stuck. So, as hard as it is, start whatever that looks like for you to really just allow yourself to go inward and be with you and reconnect yourself back to yourself. That would be my biggest piece of advice, because that's where healing begins. Healing begins when you have come to the end of yourself and you've had enough and you are ready to do the painful work of going inward. So that would be from the healing perspective. But for the leadership perspective, I talk about this in my TED Talk, and I like to challenge people. Think about the legacy that you want to leave behind,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all leaving behind a legacy, right? When we're not here anymore, all that material stuff I was talking about, newsflash, you're not taking that with you, right? That doesn't get
Mm-hmm.
to come with you. So if you are leaving a legacy behind of selfishness and ego and materialism and hurt, nobody wants that, right? Nobody wants that to be their legacy. I like to challenge leaders to think about what type of legacy they want to leave behind. And I also like to point out when I talk with people that we all have the capacity to lead, right? You don't have to have a title or a standing in an institution to be a leader, although a lot of my expertise is now headed towards institutions, right? That's where I'm focusing. But we all have the capacity to lead in some way, shape, or form, whether that's in our workplaces, our schools, our communities, our homes. We all have the capacity to lead, right? But those skills need to be nurtured and grown and developed. And so just think about what type of legacy that you want to leave behind and what is the impact that you want to have, and how do you want people to remember you? And God spoke to me about leaving behind a legacy of love, right? Just try to love people a little bit better and try to think about, if you died tomorrow, what would your legacy be, and what would the impact be that you left? And if you're not happy with what you come up with, just be honest with yourself. Look yourself in the mirror and be honest with you and ask yourself, what type of legacy am I leading right now? And if you're not happy with it, change something. Take the next step. Think about what it is that you can change to put yourself on a trajectory to where you can be happy with the legacy that you leave behind. And just try to leave a legacy of love. That's my call to action. Love people.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, love is the hardest thing to do. That's the greatest commandment that
Yeah,
Jesus wanted us to do.
absolutely.
It's not easy to love people because we are flawed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then that is what God wants us to do, and we have to obey. Because if
Yeah,
we don't lead and live through love, then we are bankrupt. We have nothing.
absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, so I so love this, Kelsey.
Me
Thank you
too.
so much.
Thank you.
Of course.
I didn't expect this. I'll tell you that right now.
This is all the work of the Holy Spirit. So,
Amen. It's so good.
yeah,
Really good. Well,
yeah,
now, you remember when I told you? Do you remember when I told you we had technical issues for almost like an hour, you guys? Like, we were trying so hard to get this to work. And I said, seems to me like the enemy doesn't want us to go live. It seems to me like there's a force somewhere. Somebody somewhere doesn't want us to have this conversation. And now I understand why. Now I know why we had so much pushback and warfare trying to get this thing on.
I
Because
know, right?
this
But
conversation needed to be had, and Satan didn't want us having this conversation tonight, so
mm-mm,
we gave him a
mm-mm.
black eye.
Sorry, Satan.
Eh, sorry, not
We
sorry.
have the higher power is upon us, so he's got nothing to do with that.
Right. Amen.
Yeah, I just want to cry. Yeah. I'm so
Oh,
kind of emotional right now. You've given us so much value,
thank
and
you.
yeah, thank you.
I
Thank you for
tried.
your life.
Oh,
Thank you for your wisdom.
thank you. Well, thank him for my life, because
Yeah, I
he's
thank
saved it
God for
many times
you,
over.
Kelsey.
I shouldn't be here today, but I am, and
You
that's by the
are.
grace of
We
God. And
are.
so we can thank God for my life. That's
Yeah,
all
I
him.
mean,
That's all
yeah,
him.
all the glory and honor be to
That's all
God.
him. Yep,
We can't
absolutely.
do anything without him.
Nope, I've
And
tried, believe me. Ask me how that's gone. Got some stories.
yeah.
Stories for another time.
Yeah. Yeah, when we use our own power, our willpower, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just not gonna work.
No, it doesn't go well.
No, no. We're just gonna burn out, tired, frustrated, and
Yep.
disappointed, and all the negative emotions.
Yep,
But when
absolutely.
we give him the power, when we use his power, when we are aligned to his purpose in our life, then we can do anything that he has called us to
I
do.
can do all things through Christ who
That's
strengthens
what
us.
it is.
I have it on my
Amen.
own. That's the
I
scripture
need
on
to
my
have a
arm right here.
tattoo. I want
Philippians
that
4:13
one.
is right here.
That's so good. All right,
Right.
everybody. I can talk to Kelsey for hours and hours, and we can be live for days just talking about these topics. But yeah, I don't wanna. Yeah, I don't want to take hold of most of your time. I know. Yeah, everyone has to go and do your stuff, and also with Kelsey, I just wanna say thank you from the bottom of my
Thank
heart
you.
to for being here and for sharing your life with us, your audience. Thank you so much for dropping by. I hope you've learned a lot from Kelsey and from this conversation. And you guys feel free to share this to your loved ones, and if you think
Yeah.
that this is useful and this gives you a lot of value, share this to your friends and your
Yes.
families.
And reach out to me. And not just to give me money, by the way. Please feel free to reach out to me. That sounded bad because we were giving links before to contact me for booking and money and donations and things. No, for real. Reach out to me. I like to make myself available when I do stuff like this. I really try to be approachable because I want people to come to me, right? So please feel free, if you have questions about anything that I've said, or concerns, or a story to share, right? Or you just need a listening ear, please feel free to reach out to me. You all know where to find me. I mean that. I'm here. So yeah, I'm available.
You guys follow Kelsey. Give her some love. Give her some support. We all need the love in the world. And yeah, we all
Absolutely.
need your support because all these won't be possible without your support as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, guys. We love you all and thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for being here.
And now, when this is all over, I'm going to go buy myself a ring light.
Yes, girl.
I'm going to get some more light fixtures for this room so that I don't do another um, live or presentation or segment in the dark.
Let's go buy one, all right?
Yay!
Thank you, everyone. See
Bye.
you next time. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.